Hello, I'm going to be doing the screencast on configuring an ESXi host for installation of the ESXi. And there are about 6 steps I'll go through. The first one, we're going to create the ESXi virtual machine. Then we're going to configure the ESXi host, configure its network settings, so ensure that it's on a static IP address, ensure that IP address is on the correct subnet, and that it's able to talk to the domain controller. Then we're going to configure the domain controller with reverse lookup, so that it's capable of talking to the host either through the IP address or its name, so like DNS. We're going to test the connectivity, so we'll just do some pinging, make sure that they're interacting, and then we'll begin the ESXi installation, but we won't complete it. It's for another video. And then I'll talk about some tricks and traps that I found, and hopefully how to fix them. Alright, let's get started. Well, we'll just keep that going and I'll cut it out. So, the first thing we're going to do is create a new virtual machine, and we'll call this one ESXi test 1 senior. I just want to ensure that it's in our correct folder. Make sure it's in our resource pool, in our data store. I just leave that default. I also don't change this very much as well. Sometimes I just update it to 2012 or 2016. It doesn't really make a difference. Alright, now when we get to the settings for the ESXi host, because it's going to be hosting either a lot of data, a lot of VMs. In this case, it'll be installing the vCSA, the vCenter server application on it. It's going to be managing all the other ESXi hosts. It's going to be managing the virtual machines. So it needs a lot more grunt than just a normal virtual machine. So we're going to give them 2 CPUs, 10 gigabytes. These are the minimum requirements for the ESXi appliance. And we're going to give it 250 gigabytes on the hard disk, and we're just going to ensure that it's thin provisioned. Because we deal with limited space, if you thick provision it, you're going to be using the whole 250 gig all the time, and it's just not very efficient. But this also means you have to be wary. If you look at a resource pool and it says you've only used 100 gigabytes, but each of your machines has the capacity of 250, then if they start filling up, you're going to very quickly use up all your resource pool, and your machines will think they have access to more hard disk space than they do. And then when they go to grab that and it's not available, they'll blow up. So just be mindful that if it's thin provisioned, the capacity for your hard disk, for your machines to pull on more memory that may not be there, is higher. So be careful. In the CD drive, I've heard in classes that we've had issues accessing the library. Things not showing up. Like this. So it won't tell. So what we'll do is we'll just make it a host, a client device, and then I'll change that once the machine's been created, which is fine. So 2 CPU, 10 gigabytes of memory. In the future, this will require more NICs, more network cards. But for now, we'll just keep 1, because we're just connecting to the domain controller in order to install our ESXi. There we go. Next. So this will have to be changed in the future. And then finish. Ah, and there it is. So now that it's been created, we can edit its settings. Yep. And now if we change this to the data store ISO file, hopefully we can now see the contents. And what we're looking for is the Net 701 vSphere hypervisor. So this is our ESXi host. And then we just want to click OK on that. Connect. OK. And we'll power it on. Alright, so this is going to go through the installer. I'm going to pause it and I'll come back when it finishes all that jazz. Oh, that's the wrong button. Alright, so now that our ESXi host is finished installing, we can now go through the, well, it's finished reading the disk. We can go through the installation settings. So I'll accept, and then it'll scan. I'm not sure how long this takes. Yep, good. US default. Root password is going to be the usual. Scanning again. Yes, hope this one's just as fast. I'll pause it to save time and I'll come back. Alright, so here's an interesting problem that I had the first time I set this up. Is we get a warning as we are installing the ESXi host, and it talks about our hardware virtualization warning, and it's saying that virtualization is not a feature of the CPU or is not enabled on the BIOS. So this can create errors when you're trying to create virtual machines once you've installed, and while you're trying to install the vCenter server appliance. And to get rid of this error, you need to go into your settings. So if you go into the ESXi host you're installing and you edit its settings, and then under the CPU you can find hardware virtualization, expose hardware assisted virtualization to the guest operating system. Okay, so this, once I enabled this, simply because Google told me to, once I enabled this, the error went away, and I had a problem I was having with installing my VCA also went away. So whether it happens every time, I'm not sure, but if you do get that warning, this is how to fix it. You just check this, and you have to turn it off to check it, so I can't check it now. But because I'm not installing the VCSA, this video, I won't. But yes, this could be a trap. But we'll continue. And then we install it, and it will take 1,000,000 years, so I'll be back in 1,000,000 years. Alright, so the installation has completed, and now it's just going to ask me to remove the installation media and then reboot the server, which is pretty straightforward. You can just edit settings and the ESXi host, find the CD drive, and then you can just turn it off. And then Facebook's coming up with lots of stuff. Excellent. And turn that off. Interesting. So it will not let me select OK. I will be back once I figure out what's happening. Alright, instead of just turning it off, I just changed it to client device. And because it has nothing in there, it'll be fine. And now I can go back, and I can push enter and reboot. And I'll be back when it reboots. I'll show you how to change its IP address into a static IP address on the network, and then I'll show you how my domain controller is blown up. If I have time, I'll show you how to fix it. I'll see you later. Okay, so our ESXi host has now been installed and rebooted, and now we're just going to log into it. The password we used earlier, and this is what the main screen looks like. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go to Configure Management Network. We're going to look at the IPv4 configuration. Now in here, it's got dynamic to start with, and I like to set it as a static, and it will allow us to create a reverse lookup in our domain controller. So the IPv4 address I'm going to give this one is, so this is my network, and then I'm just going to give it 201, because I know that one hasn't been handed out yet. I'm on a -24. Alright, there we go. And the default gateway will just leave blank, or you can just set it to your domain controller. It doesn't matter, since on the Talos network we don't have internet. But 4.4.1 is the IP address of my domain controller, so I just set it as that. And once it's been changed, you just click enter, and you'll see the changes on the right hand side of the screen. And that's pretty much it. DNS configuration. So our DNS server is the domain controller. We have no alternate, and the host name let me check that host name. Okay, so the local host, this refers to the name of this particular host, which is ESXi test senior, and we can OK that. So now these are set up. The next thing we need to do is we need to look at our domain controller. Now mine has currently exploded. So if I show you my domain controller, I can show you the problems that I'm having at the moment that I've not yet fixed. And that is, it will no longer start my DHCP server, which is great. So I'm either going to find a way to fix this, or I will just create a new domain controller, and I've written down all the settings I had. But basically what we do is we set up a forward and reverse lookup for the ESXi host. So that basically lets us look at the IP address, figure out its name, look at its name, figure out its IP address. And we can use one or the other to still locate the same machine. And then from there, we will add the disk. So we'll put in the VCSA ISO file. We'll be putting it into our domain controller, and then using the magic of Internet Explorer to install. And here you can see my VCSA. It may not work because my DHCP is blown up, but if it does, I'll get to show you. However, no. Okay. So this will have to be fixed. And until that is, I can't show you any more. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to see how long this video is as well. So, thank you for watching, and hopefully I figure out how to fix this, and I'll let you guys know. Ciao.